I was lying down, scrolling on my phone, and suddenly I said to myself, this time I'm really going to change. I said it silently, inside my own head. No one heard. But I felt that moment. This time I was sure. 3 days later, I stayed in the same bed, on the same phone, with the same shame. Has it happened to you too, hasn't it? You say this to yourself every month, every week, maybe every night, and every time it breaks the same way. Now I know that the problem wasn't in my willpower. The problem was in that very moment. The moment I announced it before starting. Even when I announced it silently inside my own head. 250 years ago, a 14-year-old German girl discovered this. And this discovery turned her into the most powerful empress of Russia. What I want to tell you is very simple, but very few people learn it in time. This is not about manipulation. This is not about a weapon against others. This is about protecting your own transformation from the silent doubts of others, even from your own tongue. Because your greatest enemy sometimes sits on the other side of the mirror, and her name is the rushed announcement. Sophie discovered this 250 years ago in a cold palace room when everyone expected someone else from her. Her name was Sophie, the daughter of a small German principality brought to Russia as a bride at the age of 14. The one who chose her was Empress Elizabeth to marry her off to the future Tsar Peter. When Sophie entered the palace, she had no power at all. She didn't speak Russian, she didn't know the Orthodox religion, she didn't even understand her fiancé's language. Peter was 2 years older than her. He was the loudest man in the palace. He announced his every plan, he openly spoke his hatred for Russia, he bragged everywhere. Sophie did the exact opposite. She never said to anyone in the palace, "One day I will be important." At night, after everyone was asleep, she took secret Russian lessons. She would study so late that her tutor fell asleep before she did, but she kept on reading. Once, she almost died from a cold because she was walking barefoot on the freezing floor so that sleep wouldn't take her, so that she could read more. At 15, she converted to Orthodoxy. She changed her name to Catherine. This was not just a change of name. This was the rebuilding of an identity from scratch. Years passed. Catherine moved through the palace like a quiet shadow. She took part in no intrigue, she made no demands. But she was reading Voltaire. She was reading Montesquieu. She knew the political map of Russia by heart. She quietly built friendships with Russian officers. She studied the clergy, who stood on whose side. She kept everything in her memory. Peter looked at her and thought she was just a meek wife, and for that reason, he underestimated her. Elizabeth died, Peter ascended to the throne, and it took only 6 months for Peter to turn all of Russia against himself, because he said his every feeling, his every plan out loud. The army turned away from him. The church turned away from him. The court turned away from him. And in that moment, what did Catherine do? She did not fight for the throne. She did not make a call. She was simply ready. The army and the clergy had already chosen her. They were already speaking her name, because for years she had been quietly building trust among them, unseen by anyone in power. At 33, Sophie, the German girl, became the Empress of all Russia. She ruled for 34 years. She turned Russia into a great European power, and she entered history with the title The Great, one of only 3 or 4 in Russian history to carry that title. Peter announced his every plan and collapsed in 6 months. Catherine announced nothing and stayed on the throne for 34 years. Now I will connect the truth Catherine discovered in that palace room to your own life. Every time you give yourself a new word, this time I'm going to change, This is my final decision. Something small happens in your brain. The word itself, this intention, gives you a slight satisfaction. You feel as if you have already changed. But you haven't done anything yet. You have only declared it inside your own head. And that satisfaction eats your energy. Because the brain doesn't distinguish between I did it and I will do it, it gives the same reward in both cases. This is why every change you announce falls apart 3 days later. Because you have already taken your reward. You have already felt yourself changed, even though you haven't changed. Now take this one level deeper. You told your friend, you told your mother, you wrote it on Instagram, others heard your announcement. A small doubt was born in their eyes because they know you. They remember your previous announcements. Even if those doubting looks are invisible to you, trust me, they are there. Now what do you feel? You are no longer making a change. You are trying to prove something in their eyes. And this is the death of transformation, because real transformation is for yourself. But you are trying to prove yourself to your friends. If you are rebuilding yourself, don't say a word about it to anyone in advance. Rebuild yourself without being seen and without announcing. Then appear directly, already complete. I have tested this in my own life too. For years, I lived the same cycle. I would find a new job, and immediately I would tell my mother, "Mom, this time I'm staying. This time I'm going to rise." Months later, I would quit. I would enter a new relationship. I would tell my friend, "This one is different. I am different." A few weeks later, the same break. I thought the problem was in me, that I was weak. Then one day I gave myself an experiment. My next goal, I would tell no one. I would not even write it down anywhere. I would just do one small thing every day, and I would not be visible to anyone. 3 months later, I was a completely different woman. No one asked anything because I had promised nothing. Only at the end of the 3rd month did the people around me lift their heads and say, "You look different." I didn't say that I had decided to change. I just smiled because I had already become a fact that could not be argued with. Now think, what does this look like in your life? In a relationship or without one? You make a decision, for example, to be calmer, to love more deeply, or not to love at all. This is your business. The moment you say it to someone, to your friend, to your mother, to your Instagram followers, even to your boyfriend if you have one, you move yourself into their eyes. Now your inner work is under their observation. Your every small mistake is under their magnifying glass. Your every step demands an explanation. Yet a real woman does not move herself into anyone's eyes. Your inner world is your fully private room. No one can enter there uninvited, not even the closest person. You change for yourself. You think for yourself. You grow for yourself. And one day when someone enters your life, he sees a finished woman, not a project under construction. You are never forced to explain yourself because your story is not subscribed to anyone's opinion. And this is the most beautiful kind of freedom, to stand alone inside and not to be ashamed of standing alone. At work, you want a higher position and you tell everyone about it. Your colleague hears, your friends hear, basically everyone around you hears. They say, "Good luck," but inside they begin to evaluate you. Can this girl actually do it? Every time you walk into the room, you see this question in their eyes, and you grow tired. Yet if you work silently, and you are offered the position when you are ready, no one places a doubt in front of you, because there was no announcement of yours. There was your result. When Catherine walked out of that palace room, she did not walk out for revenge. She did not walk out to prove anything. She walked out simply to be herself, and the self she had built was so strong that an empire gathered around her. You also have a palace room, and it is the screen of your phone, the ear of your friend, the caption field of your Instagram. Every time you pour a word into it, you destroy that word before it has taken root. Write to me in the comments, what was the last change you announced out loud, and how did it fall apart? It would mean so much to me to see your comments. To not miss our next videos, subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video. Goodbye.